Yo, what's up guys? Siege video, but a little bit different. I'm gonna be giving you all of the tips of how to make your cleaves more successful, because it's not just about outspeeding. It's not just about like your damage dealer doing an insane amount of damage. There's a lot more niche kind of units and runes that do make things a little bit more safe if things go wrong. And you know, it's Summoners War. Stuff goes wrong. You can spend 700 on some scrolls and you get nothing. Well, no, I'm still slightly salty about that one. But either how. For the video of today, we're going to be looking at the siege hits that I did in the previous siege. And then I'm going to go over runes and kind of tricks that does make it a lot more safe. So yes, within this video, I will be showcasing my runes and how I do rune that up. Number one tip is always do go for your best runes on every offense. Do I do that myself? Absolutely not. Most of the time I go for presets. But it is very recommended to go for your best runes on your best offense every time, especially if the siege hits do really matter. So for that team is this team over here. Maximilian is looking like this. So it's very high on damage. It's more or less like an RTA kind of style of Maximilian, of adding a lot of damage. Accuracy is a little bit on the low side, but you do fix the accuracy in here. Plus, the interesting fact is, most of Maximilian damage actually comes from the S2, because the S2 is enemy max HP scaling. And then over here, just some more crit damages. As you can see, this Tiana is not ruined right now. The Tiana that I always do tend to use is the Tiana that is, let's see which one of the two. This one right here. It is not that fast, but it's decently fast. If I want to make it faster, if I don't feel that comfortable for how much speed it is, I still have like a few options here and there which I can go for, like speed upgrades. But this is pretty much just a preset, but we could go, for example, for something like this. And then I can add a few extra speed in there. Important is that your Tiana still does damage, especially in the version with a Chunk Pong out there. Chunk Pong is going to push back the attack bar. Maximilian has a second turn to go, but also the Tiana will go for that S2. So you do want to have crit damage less, because the enemies are probably already at lower HP, and therefore crit damage less would do a lot more. I should actually change the one to a crit damage 2, and therefore I would actually do the most amount of damage. But crit damage less is what makes you deal most damage. Chunk Pong also, we're looking at Swift. And that's also the thing for both the Maximilian and the Chunk Pong. You don't have to Vio. Like, you don't need a 22% chance to deal more damage. You just want to deal more damage by being more speedy, having more accuracy, maxing out or nearly maxing out the accuracy, but adding in a lot of stats. I'm not 100% sure what's the tuning to how much speed this one needs. I think it could maybe need a little bit more if I go for my strongest set. But I think that if I want to go for a little bit of a speed upgrade, this one is a speed upgrade and an upgrade on literally everything, if I do want to please to go for that. So that is my first hit, and also the recommendation on these runes. Just add a lot of damage and then this team will do. But keep in mind, your Tiana, which is your setup unit, still has to deal damage too. Moving on to the next team, which is also once again a Tiana team, and in this case a Grogan. Grogan could of course be a Poseidon, it could be a lot of things out there. So in this case, you already see it. Galleon is on Violent. Galleon on Violent is so much stronger than a Galleon on Triple Fight. And why is that? Sure, you might do a lot more damage on Triple Fight, or just a little bit more damage. But in this case, the Violent can actually give you another chance to go for an S1 and actually deal some proper damage. Also, you noticed already, these units can take a little bit of hits. Like in the end, I did not clear everything. We're going into a bruiser fight. This happens more often than you think. If I had a Galleon without any stats, that S2 would have done a good bit of damage and would have maybe taken out the Galleon. Then he starts working on the Grogan and then I die. So that is one of those things you want to prevent, because you cannot always expect everything to die. If he had armor break on all three units, match would have been over. Match would have been super simple. But that is the thing. It doesn't always happen. So I had to make sure Grogan does do enough damage to kill the one high value target, which was the dark unit on the other side. But besides that, I still want to have a bruiser match. So how do the runes look on that? So in this case, this is actually not a team that I normally have stated in there, because I don't really use the Grogan altogether in Siege. It's just one of those rare occasions that I do tend to use it the moment that it is good against some anti-revives, which it does happen here and there, but I only would use Grogan if I feel very confident about clearing everything. I did use it about this build. It maybe was a little bit better than that. Like, the best thing I can actually do for a Grogan is go towards my Arena Rush Grogan. So if we go for this is the best Grogan stats that I can do. Maybe I need a little bit more of a speed upgrade from here, but this is the best Grogan I can do. Plus, since I'm mainly trying to kill the Dark unit, in that case, I should go for damage on Dark, because the moment that I kill the Dark unit, it cannot be revived. We're good to go from there. But then talking about the Galleon. In this case, I did use a Galleon that I used prior in defense, which I simply knew is a good Galleon throughout. So it is, was it this Galleon? Yeah, it's this Galleon. So this Galleon over here, and then we just switched out 2 runes. First of all, this one over there, and the other one was something along the lines of, I think it was this one, not 100% sure. And then we had like an artifact to max, something along these lines, and then we had an artifact to also max out the accuracy on the S3, which wasn't completely filled, but I have a little bit to make it like 85 and that kind of stuff. This can definitely pack a punch where there's still good enough stats that if you do want to bruiser anything, these stats will make your Galleon very bruiser heavy, and he can probably even like 2v1 against some weaker units, but things might not always die on your first hit, so it's good to have the Galleon. Tiana, as you saw, is pretty much, or was the same Tiana as the one of the prior match. Then the next match is a very simple Lushen. So we got a Miranay, we got a Dova, and we got a Lushen. I can of course show you, it's like, oh, be this fast. The speed doesn't even matter as long as you are using your fastest set. But there's still a few tricks to this. This is the team we have over there. I think this is the Lushen that I normally use. Lushen has a good bit of damage in the first place. Do really recommend to go for that. Best thing you can go for artifacts on Lushen is actually attack increasing first, then crit damages, and then additional damage by attack. This one could actually be higher. Also, if I go for additional damage by attack over here on the 6, it would be stronger. And this is just combination lines. Most of the time, combination lines do add most damage value to that. Skill 1, skill 2, I would actually recommend to have everything max skilled on your Lushen, especially if you have like an account as old as mine. You should have your Lushens with full max skills, and I have no clue why I don't have that. Same for your Dova. You should want to max out your Dova for max level. I still have to do that, but I'm being too lazy. So in the case of your Dova, he is just the fastest out there. But if you have good runes for speed or good artifacts for speed up effect, which I have a 25 over there and a 28 over there, you can maybe get away with going for a build where you do have some fast fight runes in there. So the build that I normally use on this is something along these lines where it does still have like a good bit of speed, while there is also the potential for some fight runes in there. So in this case, we are looking at 225 is definitely fast enough after a speed buff from a Miranay. So that is definitely a recommendation right there. In the case of the Miranay, your absolute fastest set, but for artifacts, it's highly recommended to go for the additional damage by speed. The highest you have really doesn't matter too much what you have on the side of it, but the highest additional damage by speed artifacts, main reason is you get a speed buff and you do a multi-hit on this skill. So the multi-hit on this skill is your best chip damage. But in most cases, in a team like this, you kind of want your Lushen to just full-on kill. Maybe if there's no like a fire unit surviving, then it's kind of fine. But that is what you're aiming for, just for the Lushen to straight up kill. Well, I do have 2 Miranays, and they have a whole tower of it. If I had 5 times this team and I had to clear the whole tower of it, I would just like paste over the whole set and just go to the next and go to the next, go to the next. You know how that works. Then next team, more Tianas. Man, this meta is so allowing so many Lushens, so many Tianas. In this case, the Neftis is most likely something I also use on defense. Same for the Siana. It's maybe a little bit too LD heavy to go into the runes of like what does really help. But you kind of get the idea, right? Make sure that everything is bruiser heavy. Make sure that the things that should be Vio are on Vio. Actually, Neftis could be more on the damage set. If you're just purely focusing on offense, I would probably go for a Swift set on that one as well. Same for the Siana, because you preferably don't want to be dependent on your Vio to actually win any. Then next team is the Tomoe hacker team. I'm not sure if I ever showed the runes on this, but the main thing that you do want to have on this is very good artifacts, because the better your artifacts are, the more damage you do from just being tanky. So then also adding more tanky stats adds more value to that. So in this case, using this against the Tianling is mostly not that useful, because you cannot really start off with a Tomoe skill 2, because then the Tianling instantly moves, could start stunning you, that kind of annoying stuff. But it's definitely a super strong team. And I'll showcase the runes of this in a little bit. You can go for Despair on the hacker, you can go for Violet on the hacker. Both of them are totally fine. I think I went Despair on the hacker. I kind of like Despair a little bit more, because it gives more chances to the Tomoe to also spread a stun from that. So if we're looking at the runes, Tomoe is sitting at a Despair set herself. I do think she gets max accuracy. She should have max accuracy, that's pretty important. Artifacts don't really do too much on her in the first place, so I just kind of went whatever. So just a fast Despair. This one is just missing one rune. I think the one rune you're normally missing is probably the one I think I was using this one before, so a little bit of crit rate doesn't help that much to go for crit rate. I think attack or HP just simply is more. Probably I was using this one. So just more attack in there. And then just for the additional damage, that's where the main damage comes from. Triple lines over here, double lines over there, but good high rolled lines. And that is definitely the important factor. Plus a little bit of accuracy does help out if you're not maxing out the accuracy in the unit itself. And then we have the Amber, which moves as third. Once again, you have to put like the artifacts to it. This artifact, full triple lined, and then the other artifact I mostly use is the one over here. So once again, close to triple lined as well. So therefore, you just simply add a lot more damage while being pretty darn tanky. Then a interesting hit, which is pretty funny to use, especially since you have two fast strippers moving up front. It just works out pretty well. You can also, instead of the second Robo slot, you can just put any pushback, any kind of Zhongshengla I've been using in there, Xian I've been using in there, any kind of thing that works in there can kind of work. So for runes, it's just the Haiyan is really fast, or the Robos really fast. I would put the second Robo, in this case I went for the Dark Robo as second Robo, on pretty high violent runes, and therefore you just simply add more damage. It is not a team that I have normally commonly runed up. For the Haiyan, it's just speedy, max accuracy, doesn't really get any more like complicated than that. For the two Robos, the main thing that you want to be aiming for is focusing on either an attack or an HP 4, accuracy in the 6, because you still need your max accuracy. And then you also do want to go for just the highest combination lines you can find. So something along the lines of this is really good. As mentioned, this one that I was using prior on also the other unit is really good. And those are the kind of things that you just want to be aiming for. High additional damage stats, because the additional damage stats are your full damage output. So the more lines you have over there, the better it is. Also, you have to keep in mind, especially for the Fio unit, it might be that you end up with more HP than you actually have, like the speed, for example. In the case of Robos, maybe not really, because their HP is really low. But let's say for the attack, it could be that your attack stat is a lot higher than your speed. If you're using like a 180 speed, but like plus 2k attack, then your additional damage by attack has a little bit more value than your additional damage by speed. So that you definitely have to keep that in mind. Where do you have the highest stats? Where do you get the most add damage for? And then you just, as you can see, is like, if you deal enough damage in the first few rotations, everything's kind of dead already. This was definitely a little bit more of a tricky hit. Wasn't too sure about it, but it's kind of just a Camilla kind of style. Like, yo, we bruiser it. They don't have any sustain, and with no sustain, I can just kind of try to get a unit out. But how much damage was this thing doing? 24.6k bomb. That's a lot of damage. Like, in this case, you do want to go for as tanky as possible on all three. I highly recommend to go for the speed tuning where they are at least 270 speed, because with the 270 speed plus the speed tower, you're above the combat speed of 286. And with 286, you're moving in, what is that, tick 5, tick 4? I think it's tick 5. But whatever tick it is, I just know these speeds. But with that, you kind of have your way of just being tanky as hell. And the thing is, with all of the units over here, they were just mainly focusing on being exactly on the 270 speed and then adding as much HP as possible, just to get more healing in, just to get more survivability in, just to get more hits in, because all of the hits that they were doing were additional damage hits in most cases, or just straight up ignored defense because of the bomb. And then we were aiming for what's it called? Additional damage. Ooh, nearly died over there. That was a dangerous Ciara. Holy shit, that thing did do a lot of damage. But yeah, the main thing that you're aiming for after that is just additional damage by HP and by speed for the Gyome, because the Gyome is the main one to deal the damage. In the case of the Raccoon and the nice double sleep into the astray, into the counter. Cleansing. But yeah, as you can see over here, it's definitely a dangerous hit. Not really sure if I really recommend this hit, but for runes, it doesn't really get that much more crazy of just making sure you have the right speed. After having the right speed, just getting a lot of HP in there. And this was barely even enough HP in there, which, okay, that was like, if he's attack broken, the damage is definitely a lot less, but he was pretty darn fast and pretty darn, I think rune quality on this one, pretty good in general. So in the end, if you proc enough, you always win in Summoner's War. It's just one of those things. But yeah, for this, there's not too much to show in the runes. As I mentioned, just get the right speed, be super high on HP, like everything was like plus 30k HP after that. And then for artifacts, minus on your supports, healings on your supports, and additional damage by multi-hits for your damage dealer, which was this thing in the end, which definitely did not do that much damage, but was mainly there to just survive. I'm not sure if it was the best in slot in this in the first place, but it kind of did work out. Then we have 2 more hits left, and we actually used more Lushens. So actually I picked up a 5th Dova right now. It was an expensive Dova, but I have another Dova to do a team like this. And I was like, maybe if they go full counter stuff that they could actually make it work where they could maybe kill me. But in most cases, that doesn't really happen. People tend to go just for more speedy sets. And in the end, a Dova plus a 30 lead will never be outsped by a Greg or by a Chandra. This one looked a little bit more tanky. Well, it looks a little bit more that as well. There's one thing I can recommend for this team because you want to use a different style of Dova over here than the Miranate Dova. So if we're looking at this style over here, is this the... No, that's actually not the Jhin that's half ruined already. I do have a Jhin that's like half-ish ruined somewhere. One of the... Yep, this is my Jhin that I normally use. So this is the Dova. In this case, you go for the absolute fastest set on your Dova. That does make sense. But after that, you want to go additional damage by speed, because Dova might be taking more turns for the cleanup. And then you want to have that additional damage by speed to just have a little bit better value of the cleanup. What do you want to put on the Jhin? You want to go triple fight on the Jhin, and you still want to be as fast as possible. So triple fight on the Jhin might look something like this, and then it is recommended to still max out the crit rate. I did think I have one over there, yep. So something along these lines for the Jhin makes the Jhin really good at cleaning up, because Jhin itself has pretty solid damage. You mainly want to be doing, once again, crit damage by low, because your Lushen probably already made units pretty low on the HP. And it does kind of depend. Are you going to go for the S2? Are you going to go for the S3? Depending on like either multi-hits, or are there AoE hits, or are there single hits? But those kind of things definitely do help you out a lot to get better value. Because let's say that you make a Jhin of triple fight, but it's on runes that you might as well just throw at your like Dagora in R5. Well, maybe your Lushen doesn't clean up like a Kakano, or doesn't clean up like, in this case, the Odin. You might start to lose if your Jhin doesn't have a proper cleanup. In my case, you saw the Jhin just annihilate that Odin second life, and then it's GG super easy. So those are the things you have to keep in mind. It's not about all out speeding. It's not about dealing as much damage on your main damage dealer for your cleaves. Both of them, yes, kind of is. But if anything goes wrong, if anything survives, your other units should still do enough damage to clean up. And that is very important for all of your cleaves and just getting better success rate in Seiishizo. Did hope you enjoyed this video, and hope to see you as always in the next one. If you did, like and subscribe, because I haven't been asking for that enough, and people tell me I should be asking, because otherwise we never reach the 100k. So see you when we hit 100k. No, it's see you in the next video. Either out, guys. See you later in the Discord, and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.